Okay, so we're rolling. The topic today is telepathy, and we're going to discuss from an astrological perspective why Uranus in Taurus could bring us telepathy. The other thing that this group has been exploring is the group dynamic. And we've looked into different kinds of traumas that the human race has had, such that it could shut down the part of the brain and the part of the heart that can really listen to the intuitive flow between two beings. So often people think that energetic trauma release is kind of beginner's work, but I would say we should flip the script on that too. So energetic trauma release is like advanced version. If you're on this planet and you're continually releasing the traumas for yourself and for the collective, I would say that's like advanced work. And often people think, oh, we don't need to kind of go to the womb story or look at the archetypes of the father or how the divine feminine has been weaponized. We don't need to go there because we're already in the light. And I would say the important work is to keep diving deep into all of the collective traumas, because it's not just about my personal beautiful life, which by the way it is. It's about me continually being of service to everyone and diving deep. So what I want to, and I was just hopping with Emmeline, so I'm kind of out of breath because we were doing this energetic hopping. So what I want to get into is that Uranus and Aries was very much the age of the internet. And we were all connecting, going, oh, wow, look at, there's other people like me. This is amazing. And we can put up a Facebook page and tell about our unique individuality, which is Aries. Now, Taurus is like fully bringing spirit into form. So when you bring spirit into form, which is Taurus, earth sign, feminine, and Uranus is there bringing spirit into form. And the quality of Taurus is to be sensual, giving and receiving, enjoying your form, relaxing into conversation and flow. It's even tantra, and it's that deep level communication between two bodies that I'm very excited that Uranus being there, which is this highly electrical, inventive energy. So it was discovered in 1781, which is when Ben Franklin allegedly discovered electricity. So whenever Uranus comes in to a new sign, it's going to give an invention. It's going to be like, pow, guess what? We've got this invention. Now, Aries is very fast because it's a fire sign and it's cardinal. So we saw internet just explode in Aries. Taurus is slow. It's feminine. It has to feel into everything. It's that intuitive heart connection that I sensually receive you and I accept that gift back to me. That's Taurus. So when Uranus is there, it might be a little bit slower to bring about that real heart conversation. But because Taurus is like fixed sign, Earth, once we got it, we got it. And that's what I'm very excited about. So if we say we don't want 5G and we don't want these radiation rays coming down on us, this group right here, which I call the Magi, whatever seed we plant in this conversation goes out to the whole collective. So I'm really open to whatever everybody is receiving about what telepathy is. How could Uranus in Taurus have anything to do with it? And maybe if you want to get into your own personal astrology, where would the telepathy happen for you? So let me give examples. If Uranus is in your 7th house, because Taurus is your 7th house, maybe you would be practicing that heart coherence, that deep listening, that sensual exchange with a partner. If it's in your 8th house, Uranus and Taurus, maybe you'd be like transmitting through the dimensions into the other worlds, the magical realms. If it's in 9th house, Uranus is the planet of astrologers. 9th house is the house of astrology. So maybe you'd be having telepathic communication. Suddenly you're totally talking to Mercury. You're having a complete energetic exchange with the sun. So it can happen in different locations for you also, depending on where Taurus is in your chart. So, you know, I can blab on for a while, but who wants to jump in either with what telepathy is, why you think Uranus and Taurus could have something to do with it, or your own experience in your chart, or anywhere you want to go at this point?
I kind of get confused with telepathy because I feel like a lot of cardiogenesis, telepathy, like emotions, like sensing, intuition. I feel very like it's all like a big mush for me. It's like the whole thing. I don't really know how to separate telepathy from that. Does anyone else like have any like thoughts on that? So for me, it would be like I can feel like when I'm thinking of someone and they'll text me, or when I'm thinking like, oh, you should do that now, and then that person just does it, and I'm like, oh, that's perfect, like it all aligns, like from a positive heart, well, not like in a manipulative way. Yeah, but is that intuition? Like I don't know quite what the crossover is.
Does anyone want to answer that? Does anyone have a really clear definition of telepathy? Go ahead.
I have some things I've been kind of working on, and I actually just did an online class on telepathy. And so there, it is that kind of like tuning into like you know, you think of someone they call, and that's like a person to person. To me, I define it as being able to send and receive what's called packed thought forms. Or like, you know, if I physically send you with my phone like a zip file, I can do that just energetically, just through the structure and through the energy field. And so part of that, I mean, I would say, like what we were talking about with just reading the emotional state of someone, or you know, you think of someone they call you. That is telepathy. That's also kind of just empathy. That's also just kind of resonance in the energy field. Um, the way I think of it is even further. It's almost like a prerequisite to dealing with, you know, higher spiritual realities. So as I kind of see it and as I teach it, you're actually lighting up kind of what I call the upper pillar, so the set of chakras above the head. And that way you can send and receive packed information, you can transmit like an energy healer, you can communicate with like a star being, or you know, angel, archangel, whoever you want to connect with on that level. And so maybe thinking about it, like looking at like a Taurus, like an earth sign, for me, it's almost like a personal mission to either in groups or one by one, like, let's look at your body, let's look at your energy field. How are you wired for telepathy? And how can we amplify that? And so then we do that on the energetic level. We do an energetic transmission. And then how do you integrate that into your physical body so it becomes a reality, it becomes a kind of felt like everyday experience. So that's some things I'm playing with. So being able to send and receive packed thought forms, and being able to connect, and the missing piece, right? So we talked about person to person, also to the earth, like shamanic practices as a form of telepathy, to be able to connect with basically the spiritual world, whether it's, you know, inner earth, the earth as a living being, and then also, you know, star beings and each other. So that's kind of how I'm working with it.
I can elaborate on, you know, sort of how I see it, because I would take it back to what happened, because we all at some point were able to communicate with all species on this planet. We came in with that ability, that connection. When I think of Uranus, and I think of Babylon, and I think of Tower of Babel, and I think of what that was, I look at the Tower of Babel that's referenced in the Bible, but I also look at it as an implant into the planetary logos that changed how we receive information. So that altered our, not only our physical bodies, but the earth body in terms of interspecies communication. So for me, you know, if you don't, it's telepathy is, if you don't have the brain connection through the thalamus, through your high heart, then you're not getting those energy packets that you're talking about, Andre. It's like, you know, so part of that is the clearing, and like you were talking about the upper chakras being able to do that. But so much of what the Tower of Babel was bringing us down to a very low form of communication and pushing that energy down into the lower bodies. And so that was where it became a base layer of communication. They split the languages, they split the way we communicate. And that was the beginning of us having to build ourselves back. For me, that all happened with the Sumerian invasion that took place, you know, somewhere, you know, I hesitate to even say the timeline because we're learning that all these timelines are not what we think they are, but somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago. And so to me, all this did was change our whole endocrine system. And so, and also as a result of that, it sort of collapsed the entire magnetic field that was available to us on Earth. And that was sort of the mother principle. So that got taken out. And so it dropped our ability to sense and have those sensory communications. And so now I think with Uranus moving into Taurus, I look at it as an opportunity through what you were saying, Lolita, about it slowing down through Taurus, an opportunity for really sacred masculine, sacred feminine to come back, because those two principles can come into alignment again. And so I look at it that, you know, now Gaia herself, because we've been doing all of this work, is ready to receive that sort of communication in a way, and we're ready to receive that. And so slowly it's going to build back up through the work that we're doing to entrain. I mean, I'm really big on knowing that the endocrine system was altered, and that we're re-altering it back to, you know, what's happening. Because when I see in people's light bodies, I can see that, you know, there's circuitry that's changing, and those chemicals are, you know, coming back online, that allows us to connect through the 8th and 9th and 10th chakras up, which is where a lot of it is missing. You know, it's like you can have people that are very sensitive and empathic and understand, you know, basic communication through psychic impression, but this is almost like a higher sensory perception that we don't even know we have, because it's really coming from the higher dimensions, where, you know, that puts you in the unified field. And when you're in the unified field, then you have access to anything. It's not that you want to read everybody's thoughts every day, because most people aren't thinking things you really want to know about. But you know, it's one of those things where that's what's going to start to happen. And I think there's a real opportunity, because through this, you know, sort of horizontal and vertical connection, we're going to see that we have more than just 7 chakras available to us. We're going to start to see that we have, you know, inner stargates and energy receivers that are located, that were always available to us. And I think Uranus is going to light up those energy centers through Taurus. And, you know, we're just going to have so much more available. It won't happen fast, like as we've talked about, but I think over the next few years, we're really going to feel it in the grids. So that's kind of my take.
I'll share a little bit about what's been coming to me. And I see the creative, imaginal feminine being reclaimed. That a part of losing telepathy was losing the oracles and losing the sacred feminine who spoke and imagined and saw life into being. And that part of that fall of Babylon was when the oracles fell, and the imaginal realm got infiltrated by archons or other kinds of architecture. And it almost had like this kind of thought police on Earth. Like, you can't think that, you can't go there, or, you know, we can't. And we had all these centuries of, you know, what's right theology, what's the right way to think about this, what's the right way to think about that. And I see Uranus moving into Taurus, really healing some of the wounds. I personally have been really working on healing some of the trauma, and working with the imagery of Medusa, like the mad woman whose crown chakra was taken off or usurped, and now that Sophia energy, wisdom, is coming back to the human framework again. And so I'm really hopeful that healing will just continue as the sacred feminine is allowed to express herself on Earth again without the punishment that needs to happen for so many years.
Fabulous. So I'm going to try and pull all of these things together. So if we didn't have this internet right now, I would still be able to communicate with you. Okay. So telepathy is being able to communicate through all the dimensions with all species and access the unified field. And that it was truly ours and that it was intervened with. So all we're doing at this point is kind of putting all of this, what is now internet technology, back into our divine blueprint. Now, I just want to, and everybody, everything that everyone has said is definitely a piece of this. So now I want to just put out an interesting thing that I learned from this biology of belief that I'm studying right now. So we've also been told really clearly that we don't have access. And here's a telephone, and here's an internet, and that's another form of intervention that has come in, actually. There is a group, because I work with special needs people, there is a group called, and this is not a nice term, but it's called the idiot savants. And they have an IQ of like 25. They would not know how to get themselves dressed or even hold themselves upright or have any idea how to order their day. But if you ask them a question and your frequency is from like, you need to know something from the energetic field, an idiot savant can immediately pull something from the source field and give you an unbelievable answer. And I don't really know how that works, but they are kind of low enough IQ that they're not infringed upon by this daily like paycheck existence. And if you ask them the question, they can pull it from the field. The other experience I have, and you know, in the secret space program, they use those people. So if you're aware of that, yeah. So the idiot savants have been taken and are in bases being asked those questions right now. The other group of people that I've worked with, which are very interesting to me, are the elderly people who have dementia. And so they also are not figuring out how to get their food or figuring out how to ordering their day. And Claude and I were talking about this with a client she was kind of with her head down, just mumbling. And he was asking about her diet and why her, digestion was not going so well. He said, well, what's her blood type? And she went, what did you say? And she spoke like absolutely clearly because he asked a question and it somehow reached her energy field as this being important. So there's a bit in this about how we don't even know what to access at this point, because so much has been like taken over by Emmeline's incredible video of like just daily survival. Like we don't even know how to do the earth dreaming, shamanic, oracular, creative, like this is our dream and let's create it, because we're always in that day to day. So part of this conversation is also, how do we get out of the trauma and start spending more time in that incredible earth dreaming, galactic dreaming, source creation, participatory universe that we talked about in our last group? All right, so now I'll just leave it, see what anyone has.
I just say Uranus for me is in Taurus. Yeah, Taurus for me is in the 8th house. So it's really like, yeah, so exactly what you're saying, the magical dimensions. I you know, it's like a slow one, like we were saying, because it does feel like it's not like a sudden electric shock. But I do feel this really like earthy connection that's been happening to me in the last few weeks, where I can go out and like just declare and pray over the land, especially when I've got my feet on the ground, and really commune. And recently I'm pretty sure I heard a tree speak to me. And if I go to like specific places where I know that it's heightened, I can feel myself like start to like open. Like yesterday I went into the park and I felt myself go boom, like when I was a child, and I just go in the nature and just imagine and have my own world. It literally felt like that, and I haven't felt that in years. And I was just walking around like, well, what do I do with all this space? Like I could just make a story up or whatever. And then these dogs started barking, and literally all of the dogs started barking around me, and they were just barking. And then one of them was chasing a massive dog, and then this big dog started barking as well and approached me, and then stopped and was just facing me, going, just barking. And I felt a bit embarrassed, so I like walked away. And I really felt the dog was communicating to me. I mean, I was like, well, what is it saying? And it was almost like accentuating things that are on my mind, you know, like, yes, do that, yes. Yeah, I like the earthy sensuality of Taurus. It's really allowing me to explore that 8th house more poignantly, I think, for me.
Okay, so people are joining us. We're at a kind of interesting time right now where people are going to keep jumping in. So I also want, Laura, I'm very interested, both you and Jessica kind of knew about the Tower of Babel and our endocrine system. And I'm also interested in the policing of thought forms, because we saw this potentially with Emmeline's incredible video this week, that she was immediately policed. Okay, she was immediately receiving kind of a pushback from the thought police. So we all kind of get the feeling of what this could be. Let's also talk about like how it was intervened upon so that we can really keep moving it forward. Anybody want to talk about that some more?
Can I just say something about the video? When I was, because you know, in the video I said, you know, Lolita Caroli's astrology chart. So I wanted to put your link in, and as I was uploading it to YouTube, literally, I'm no joke, as soon as I wrote your name into the comments, into the description, it shut down. I had to reconnect in to re-upload the flipping video. Yeah.
Yes, now you know how my entire life is. It's very hard for me to load anything, and I cannot load anything here at my house. Nothing. I have to go elsewhere and use public Wi-Fi's.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're always swatting the flies away. Couple of things that just, bubbled up through what you were bringing forward. Part of it is entrainment. We've been entrained by the thought form police, if that's what we're calling them, to think a certain way, act a certain way, programming. And all of this was to, as we all know, to enslave us in a particular direction. What I have found helpful for me is the asking of the questions. Because, I literally probably at some point have, asked questions like all day long. And when I ask, now I've trained myself to ask the question and I get the answer from the field. But that didn't happen overnight. That happened through clearing, that happened through releasing trauma, that happened through, meditations, that happened through session work where, I started asking questions. I also got trained on a modality that really required a lot of, asking questions and getting answers. So, sometimes you have to go back to the basics of that sort of entrainment where you're visualizing for yourself and taking it up maybe a step from kinesiology or muscle testing or something like that, but really just constantly asking the questions so that you can get an answer. Because even when my clients ask me questions in a session, I automatically get the answer, even though they're not intending, and that wasn't really, but it comes in as information. I can get it. I had a friend just recently ask me about her dog and, a question about her dog, and that dog just popped right into my field and just laid it all out because it's available. But that comes through the opening. I feel telepathy in general has more of a masculine principle behind it. It's the divine masculine. And I see it interacting through the brain into my high heart through the feminine principles. And so, for me, going back to what Emmeline was saying earlier, how do you separate those differences? It's, when we talk about thought forms, that's coming from the masculine. When we talk about intuition and empathy and compassion, that's more female. And it's just the merging of those two things. And so, I think we need just as much entrainment for telepathy as we have been on about, emoting and allowing ourselves to feel so much of this. It just requires something different on telepathy. It's sort of like you've got to kind of retrain your brain and what it's accepting as answers and sort of allow it to drop down. When I get too much in my head, one of the best techniques that I ever learned was literally visualizing dropping my brain into my heart. And as soon as I do it, like all the confusion and all the, like, I'm not sure what that answer is or all of that goes away. And so I think, for me, I think this is the real opportunity we've set. The technology that developed the internet is our technology. It is who we are. Like, so it's like they just took it from inside of us and placed it outside of us and told us, they're more powerful than we are. But the actual technology comes from us in almost every case of everything that's available to us outside of us. So to me, that's encouraging because we see what we're capable of. You can look at that, and on the one hand, you can be upset that, a lot of our blueprint and original template has been, stolen from us in theory. But on the other side, we're getting to see what it looks like so that we can incorporate it back into ourselves. So I find that part, promising into what we can do because, it's limitless. We have limitless, infinite possibilities of what that looks like. As far as the policing of the thought forms, they're going to keep doing that as long as we're playing in the realm of not fully understanding ourselves. Because anytime that they can, sidetrack us, get us to focus somewhere else, make it frustrating, they're going to do it. But I always just look at it as like, it's the same bag of tricks. It's just the same bag of tricks. It's nothing new. Like, you'll start to just say, oh, it's the same thing. They have a program that, like, it's not very creative. Like, I always expected them to get a little more creative. It's not. It doesn't get any more creative. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to jump on that real quick. Remember that the archons are kind of shadowy images trying to live through us vicariously. So when something like that, what Emmeline said, where she put in my link and it disappeared, I'm at this point, I'm almost laughing. I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. That was a good attempt. Fabulous. Let's boot that up again, because it happens for me so often. Like even this morning, I was trying to make a tiny video like out my front door, and some of my words were cropped from that video. Like like the internet dropped on that word. Not allowed to say that. And then, it just gets hysterical to me, because they are really, who are they? Who are they? Is the source creation of our own shadow that is trying to live vicariously off of us. That's what it is. So to me, what Laura's saying about is just keep asking the questions. And when the thought police come in there, it's almost like, oh, thank you. That was very good. That was another great, comedy that you just employed there. And goodbye. I have every right to put Lalita Karoli's link in my video. And that way they can't get into any kind of like, I've made you depressed and now you're scared. And because boy, as soon as they get one click of that, boy, they're like, wow, let's grab onto this one. And reach out the moment anything like that happens to you, because the rest of us are like, oh yeah, we're there. We got you. And you will develop your skills around that. But you see what they're using is they are using telepathy on us, because they're putting a thought form into us. That's telepathy. They're putting a packet of information or fear into our field, that is what is telepathy. So we can turn it right around right there and go, who's doing that? What interference is here? Not allowed. Block, energetically, release, repel, reset, out of here. I'll be quiet for a second, see what people want to say.
Well, jumping on what you just said, we can also clear our computers. And if you don't have success in doing that, I have a couple of people that I know that do have a great clearing technique for for interference, because in a lot of ways they will attack the places that you most use, right, or that you're most invested in being, and whether that's in your relationship, or whether that's your work, or whether that's the internet, or whether that's your connection to whatever you're wanting to do. But yes, they will put those thought forms in. I was on a group trip years ago, and we left a place that in a lot of ways was a place that we identified that hadn't been identified. And there was a lot of, I'll just call it, interference, negative, sort of forces that were around, archons, all kinds of things. And I remember I got back on the bus, and as soon as I did, I had this voice in my head telling me the most horrible things about myself. Like just, basically saying, it hated me. It thought all the horror. I won't repeat it because it's not worth repeating, but it was like, it just would not get out of my head. It wanted me to kill myself. It was just telling me it was just awful. And luckily I was with a group of people. So, you can quickly spin out of it and just say, hey, bring me back into something so that you're not sitting in this head. But I was just flabbergasted at how strong that is. And whether it's subtle or strong, yes, they have that capability, but we have to say, no, you don't belong here. You have no right to be here. And I think a lot of what telepathy is for us going forward is a return to the rightful owner. We are the owners of our own brain, our own bodies, our own blueprints, and it needs to be returned. And I think Gaia is very interested in returning all of this to us as rightful owners. She's been waiting for us to take this back. That's a big part of what's happening. And I think that's what's so encouraging about it moving into Taurus, because the mother is just saying, okay, my children are ready to take on this aspect and merge back into this understanding.
I'll just share that I took an oracle training class with Marguerite Rigo-Lioso, and we studied about how to remember how to use those oracular gifts. And it was a pretty intensive 6-month program where we were meditating and clearing our space for 40 minutes every day. And then at that point, you would start to ask your questions. And it was really amazing. She had us practice like asking questions right away, and then getting in that quiet space where you're meditating for 40 minutes, and then ask your questions. And the answers that would just flow, and that you could tell they were much different and much deeper after you sat and cleared your space than if you just were to just ask right away. And she really like encouraged us and taught us and trained us how to like get into that calm, open state, which is very feminine and very yin, to be open. And yet there's so many programs in our culture and in our spirituality, certainly in Christianity, that if you open up, you know, you might just catch a demon or something. You know, like so much fear about what are you going to get if you meditate, or in my particular lineage, there's just such a work ethic, like stay busy, don't stop working, you know, you don't stop till you die, that kind of stuff. So there's a long history of not valuing being slow and quiet and practicing stilling the mind and really opening like that flower to where you're soft and receptive and open. And now I'm just hungry for it. Like at first it was really hard because there's a lot of chatter going on. There's a lot to kind of sift through. But then once you kind of step into those deep, still waters, it just creates this kind of hunger to continue to stay there. And one thing that was really helpful for me and in practice, and I continue to do this, is whenever we get into an open state, you can set your space by saying, I'm opening to only that which is for my highest good and the highest good of all beings, nothing more. And I feel like that helps make a container to relax into, where you made your intention. It's very simple, and I use it in all my yoga classes with people. You know, there is that kind of nervousness about, well, what am I opening to, and am I going to lose myself? And you know, we have this sense that we are being fed on, and we don't want to be fed on. But by setting that intention before you get into an open space, can really help protect and keep that space sacred. So I also just wanted to share that when my oldest son, who's 16 now, when he was little, he would answer questions. I would think something in my head and he would answer them. It freaked me out, you know, because I was like at home alone, and I was like, oh my gosh. But he's always been so connected to me. And if I'm worrying about something in the back of my head and not saying it, he will just speak it into existence. And when he was born, the umbilical cord connecting us was really big. And so there's some strange connection that we have. And if I'm upset, he will mirror that to me. And so I have to do a lot around him to like hide myself, to make sure that we're in balance, or that he's not feeding into me. And I do think this relates to the womb chakra. So we're talking about the womb being the programmer, that if our wombs have trauma in them, that the men in our lives, or the beings that don't have wombs, are always connecting with us on a deep level. And I think part of the opening up is not just here, but it's also in our womb spaces, because the oracles would sit on chairs with skirts on, sometimes over open surfaces in the ground, to be getting those fumes that were moving up from the earth. So I've noticed as I'm working on my issues, it's shifting my family, because my womb is healing from those past traumas. And so it really makes me feel responsible as a woman with a womb who is a programmer to be doing my work. And I thought, if every woman had a happy womb, there would be no more environmental problems on Earth anymore. I think that would just fix everything.
I really agree with the womb programming, because I really feel like at the moment that's where I feel most of my anxiety or my pain is there. And it does feel so, and the fact that these things get triggered when one is on the moon cycle, on the period, like it just makes sense that is, what you're working through. Or when someone's going through menopause, they, all these things are triggered. They say that, and it makes sense that is like the deep healing that is needed. So I totally agree. I wanted to say about Taurus, what you were saying about what you were saying about like the slow communication through, I can't remember what you said, like through meditation and like this, like slowing down and connecting. It feels to me like that is, maybe that's, Uranus and Taurus, like the telepathy comes through that kind of easing and letting go of the kind of fast, fiery Aries maybe, and then coming into this, like kind of relaxing into this, like face flat on the ground, on the earth, kind of like maybe, I don't know, like, third eye on the ground, like just receiving almost like the wet dew from the, I just really felt that when you were speaking.
So now we're starting to move into that slowing down. So whoever's watching this video, you see the progression is, you can feel the progression. It's getting deeper into the body, feeling, almost to the point where the feeling of what someone says is coming into my heart rather than me processing it with my mind. I can feel what you're saying. That's where the telepathy comes from for me. I'm starting to resonate with your resonation. I'm feeling. And then that feeling starts to be that you are this antenna. And the womb is like the root down into Gaia's receptive receiving. And each of our bodies, the human divine template, is this antenna opening to the entire cosmos and bringing all of that, accessing it down into Gaia. And that is really what we are. We're these incredible divine forms with physical bodies, bringing spirit completely into the physical, bringing all of the pure source information into flesh, into form. And that's the telepathy coming. That's our true birthright. So when the conversation starts to slow down and there's more pause, it's in that gap. It's in that gap that I feel you. So I'm going to send it to you right now. You feel it? I'll be quiet again.
I'll just share one thing that I heard this week. I was listening to Drew Valo Melchizedek speak, and he said that when we fell, we're talking about the fall of the Tower of Babylon, the Tower of Babel. He said we fell as humans from being in 4D or being in our hearts. We fell into 3D, which was very dense. We fell into our mind. And that the journey of going back is just into the heart.
Yeah, we're rebuilding our DNA, the part that was unplugged. We're plugging it back in. So through each fall, it's been, an unplugging. And to me, I just see it as like weaving the strands of DNA back through the heart space, through the places that, where it was taken away from us. It was unplugged, and it's sort of like taking back, like I said, what's rightfully ours. Through this, I don't know, I always see the weaving, and we're not only just weaving up, but we're weaving down, because the strands need to go both directions. And so, it's not just weaving it back up. I see, a lot of times that we're descending back in with the strands because they're available to us. They just were disconnected. So it's like you're reaching up to grab something, but sometimes I feel like I'm pulling it from the earth as well. Just constant threading of DNA strands.
And we're anchoring the divine feminine energy again on Earth, where for several thousand years we would get in trouble for it. And so many of us are pushing through those old traumas and like, can I do this now? Are they going to burn me at the stake now? And I think we're finding no, like generally here in the West, we can be anchored again.
Yeah, that's what feels like we're rebuilding the magnetic field back around Earth. Like, so the way I see it is that at that time we didn't have that support. So sort of in the field, it wasn't available to support. That's why we got, crucified and persecuted and, hunted and killed and all of these things, because there was no one there in the magnetics to support what we were carrying. So the way to completely collapse the magnetic field was to have us turn it off. Sort of it's like the magnetic field collapsed, but we had to also turn it off within us because there was a part of us that still was carrying it. And I think that that's, from a feminine perspective, that was our additional fall from what had already happened. And I feel now all of this is relating back to building that strength of that magnetic field through sisterhood, through these conversations, through things that we're doing all across the world, that magnetic field is getting so strong, and it's returning back to us, that piece of us that feels supported, that feels that intimate support that sisterhood used to give us, that has been so missing. I mean, I have so many memories and so many dreams and so many experiences that I can remember of this type of connection before it was taken away from us. And I feel strongly that that's what all of us are longing for, yearning for. Like I have a deep, deep, deep yearning for that. Almost like, makes my heart ache over that missing, piece where we all came together and strengthened ourselves in numbers. And now, there's still so many feminine, places within us that still, things come up and you can just feel the pain and so much of that pain is been turned upon each of us, even more than the patriarch. I mean, I see so much of the pain because, we turned and looked at each other and realized that we had to let go of something that was ours. It was like we were the ones that create, we were the creators, we were the void, we were the all of this, and we had to like turn it off. And I think that was a really painful thing to do amidst all of us, like even more painful than looking at a male doing it. It was like we knew what it cost us to turn all of that off. That's kind of how I feel.
I remember hearing that we were not allowed to channel the earth anymore.
Yeah.
And that we weren't allowed to channel the goddess or the Pleiades, the feminine stars. we were only, the women and the oracles, as they were falling, could only channel Apollo, which was the god of wisdom, but the male god. So I feel like it's the time now where we can reconnect. Like you said, those star systems are shining light, and now we're allowed to integrate our cosmic family in a much more unified way.
Yeah, I feel like with the magnetic field that recently when I would walk around outside and I would be maybe barefoot or like wearing hippie trousers or whatever, and I would feel people look at me and it would bother me, and I would feel like a glitch in my magnetic field. I'd be like, whereas now when I like walk outside in the last month or two, I don't know, just in groups of people or when I'm outside or whatever, I can feel I can hold it now, like almost fine, almost 100, like it just doesn't bother me. And I think it's through meditation and breathing more that it's happened, and through yoga, but it's really the breathing, I think, and the connecting up to like the central sun and the earth, and being that, like Lolita, what you were teaching us about that channel, you know, the deep roots and the cosmic center. And I feel so embraced by like father and mother that I'm like, oh, like what else is there, you know? But and also with the wound you were saying, Laura, of like being like losing the circle of femininity, it reminds me of the wound in Chiron that I've been feeling in the last couple of days, like that kind of tearing apart of that embrace of like nurture and like feminine bonding and like community, and the trauma of that. And I think when we can heal that in our own lives, then we can carry that. So I'm really excited for like healing it and carrying that. And I see like even this weekend in my friendship groups, loads of people are gathering this weekend. It's really funny, and it just feels like it's one of those times where there's more and more circles coming up.
Holly, I just want to, you and Lynn just got on, so I just kind of want to pull you in here. So Lynn has messaging me, we're in Vermont where we had a lot of snow. So Lynn actually doesn't have power at her house. So she just got on her phone. And Holly, you feel like that there's something really profound happening right now. I'm sure you both just jumped in and could feel it. And last time in our conversation, during our conversation, the amplitude, if you believe these machines, which I often don't, because they're, you know, AI can so quickly interfere with the machines, but during our conversation, the amplitude rose really high. And then if you believe the machines, and sometimes I'm sure that they're messed with to mess with us, the Schumann resonance was off the charts, which is Gaia's heartbeat, because we were talking about the field and the participation in the field. And it was a really intense discussion. And what we're talking about now, and I wonder, Holly, if you know anything about, you know things about the Tower of Babel too. Laura had a really interesting introduction about that was, and I want to also pull something else that Laura was saying, so I'm sure I know what I'm talking about. The Tower of Babel was a Sumerian invasion that took much of our original divine blueprint offline. But then what I'm also understanding of what Laura's saying is that then we chose to shut it down ourselves. Okay, and I could be wrong, but what I'm feeling into this is that the circle of the women knew that it could be used against us, and we shut it down ourselves. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm really feeling into that, like, because it could be used against us. And now we are not like, just so like serendipitously receiving something. We are also the ones who are picking it back up and putting that back up. because it was our choice to also shut it down completely, because it was going to be used against us. So it's not just like some like fantastic coincidence. What it is that we truly are the authors of this. And in this conversation, we're picking it back up and saying, this is our birthright. We're going to have telepathy again. Do you want to say anything, Holly? Because I know you know things about this.
Here we go. I have to unmute. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. So, you know, I've read online a lot of different stories about the Tower of Babel and what happened, and I think there's lots of versions out there. But that information is new to me. But there is something there that is very resonating. Where I think the kind of the oracular women at some point knew that some of this like telepathic and oracular knowledge was going to be used against us, and started shutting it down to in a protective way, but that there was a lot of grief to have to do that, and that sorrow there about shutting that off feels very true on the inside to me, and also how I think it feels like that there was a lot of like the coming together in groups, in merging vibrational fields to accomplish, to magnify any one individual's abilities. I think the high priestesses did come together, and so when they started to separate and break down their circles for out of protection, there was just this great sense of loss. They knew that I think some of the Britain knowledge would be lost, some of the traditions would be lost, and it feels, and because there's that tradition of the witch hunts that came afterwards, and I think there was a time of great bonding between women, that this was something that we did together. We, you know, we had our moon circles and that kind of thing, and that when that kind of deteriorated, um, and then other culture came in and kind of pitted woman against woman, and that been a big wound of about that loss of kind of coherence between women. And so that feel like, you know, I have Chiron trine Venus, and that like that feels very strongly to me. And of course, my family is very matrilineal, and I always felt like that seemed a little different because I lived at, you know, very close to my grandmother and my great grandmother, and we always went and visited my, you know, each side of my family, the grandmothers, and that to me just though felt very different than other people around me. Why, you know, what was different that my family had such a strong kind of feminine tradition. You know, the women were the leaders, and there's different reasons for that. Some of the men in the family were very wounded, and the women were like the backbone and kept things together. But I could see other people who didn't have that, and didn't have that sense of like, you know, the matriarch of the family bringing everybody together, and how that was like had an effect on families. So, you know, I think one of the things I read too was that um, one possible location for the Tower of Babel was in Turkey, near Sumerian, and that one of the lines of the priestesses had the language, like the primordial language that was vibrational, and that got kind of eroded into the many different languages, and that there is a loss of that, not just like the energetic cohesion, but that really the first language that was unifying everyone, and that was very heart-based and energetic. And I think that kind of is a kind of circular discussion of like kind of what we've been going around. And another thought too was this idea of moving from the heart into the mind. And I think one of the things that I've been looking at with the asteroids, and I've kind of talked a little bit with you about this, Lolita, is that in the Greek system, they have Prometheus, which is the forethought, the thinking, and Epimetheus, which is the his brother, a Titan, who's like the afterthought or being impulsive, doing things, but that's kind of following your heart, you know. And it's Prometheus that warns Epimetheus from marrying Pandora, who's the woman who has all the gifts, but the gifts are portrayed as these many negative things in the Hellenistic myths. Whereas I think really it is, we've talked about how Pandora has all the magic, and you know, Zeus gives, you know, Pandora to man, and the man who marries her is you know, Epimetheus. He's the heart-based brother, you know, and it's Prometheus is saying, oh, whoa, hold on, be careful what you accept from Zeus. She's kind of weaponized here, and he takes her in anyway. But when she opens the jar and she lets all this out, she's the one who feels the grief in this many of the stories. It's not him. He doesn't, you know. Some stories say that he's the one with his kind of bumblingness who opens that up, and I guess you could read that in a different way of he's following his heart and he's going and accepting all the gifts. But there's always Prometheus kind of saying, be careful what you know, and putting that fear in there. Be careful what you accept. And I mean, I think in my own life, why this resonates is, and this happens a lot, like a lot of the in school age children, there is a lot of cliquishness between girls, and there can be a lot of bullying between girls that's kind of very passive aggressive. And I'm not sure if we had not lost our kind of matriarchal support system, if that would be the case. You know, and I know that as a kid, I was kind of the odd kid. I didn't fit in so well. I wasn't like interested in boy bands and you know, pop stars and that kind of thing. I like wanted to learn about history and other things that kind of put me on the edge, and it made you know, a little bit was being a target. And of course, that's part of my own life experience to learn how to stand up for myself and just be me. And but a part of that too is from a very young age, part of the woman wound is becoming kind of a pack and attacking the outsider. You know, and that goes right back to kind of the stories of the witch trials. You know, in New England, the Salem witch trials are a well-known story, and I have ancestry back to that area, to both parts of it. So it's like genetically ingrained in me to kind of feel that pain of girls against women and girls against girls and classes against classes, and that separativeness that I think we've lost with the loss of the priestess cohesion. So I think that feels like a whole lot to like put out there. So I'll let anyone else who has a thought speak now.
That was great, Holly. That was really great. It brought up a lot in me. I had a grandmother that was very matriarchal as well. And with that came a lot because my mother stayed very tied to her my whole life and forgot to be a mother to her children because she was still being mothered by her mother. So, you know, I came in to sort of see that and understand that. But, you know, what it really brings up in me also is the wound that we're carrying. I kind of remember, I have memories of that we didn't necessarily all agree about turning it off. That there were groups of us that didn't want to do that, and there were groups of us that did. And ultimately, I think that's the pitting against each other that we feel so often. I could cry right now. Like it's like my heart is like vibrating, because we knew we were going to be losing and altering a really big part of ourselves, because this is our entire endocrine system. This is our entire hormonal balance. This is like literally what makes us who we are. It affected our Kundalini. In essence, we had to shut down parts of our Kundalini. And I think that the oracles and the high priestess knew what it was going to be required in a future time space to bring that back on. And I think that they knew that the damage was going to be felt, you know, through eons of time. And, you know, I think that those of us that have those memories, it's just really, really painful. And, you know, just listening to you, and it's not so much exactly the words you used, I was really feeling behind what you were saying. So thank you, because it's like it just brought it right up here, like right up to my heart. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, it's those myths, Holly, that you're saying are codes. Which is why it's so important to be able to articulate those, sort them out. What does that really mean? Because everyone can feel it in this group. You can feel it. And I think we're at that same place right now where we're going to either, and I can feel this, either choose to move forward and come back online with it. This is why I felt very strongly, and Laura also, you know, we were working together at this time, kind of talking through my higher self, said, you know, it's time to gather the Magi. And the group dynamic is some people really want to bring it all back online. They want to talk about the telepathy. They want to bring about what's necessary for a quantum shift. And there could still be this feeling of, no, that I don't want to do that. I don't want to bring it back on. I have too much pain about that. I'm still very strongly in my wound. I cannot move forward. The wound is too deep for me to have this conversation. I do feel like we're at that crossroads again. And that's why it's hitting us so hard. Are we ready to bring it back online? Are we ready to deal with the trauma that prevents us, the interference around that? And really, again, it's a question of sovereignty. Are we ready for our sovereignty again? So I'll be quiet now.
I think like it brings up for me the flight mode, where it's like not airplane mode. Do you know what I mean? Like I need to run away from this. I need to run away from this. And like before we have our group calls, I often feel like my energy vamp up, but my kind of anxiety vamps up as well, and I can feel the trigger. And it's like this, yay, we're gonna have a call, and this, holy crap, I'm like, there's a part of me that doesn't want that, you know? And I have to like really face that and be like, that's okay, that's totally fine. And to understand, you know, to bring consciousness about it, which is basically what is, you know, it is this fear of opening up again, because, you know, it opens up all that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, this is like, I think this is why it's so fascinating that Uranus is going to move through Taurus, because that part of us that, you know, it's going to light up, you know, the lightning bolts of information and coming through are going to put us in a position to have to make that choice. You know, it's sort of like that energy is lighting up this whole space. And I think that for me, I'm happy to have the assistance, you know, because I really think that that is how I'm looking at Uranus coming through there. because it's gonna unstick, not only just in sort of how we feel, but also for our bodies. I think that it's going to help elevate connections and sort of points within our circuitry that may be either, I won't say blocked, but maybe just aren't circulating quite the way that they used to, because we're going to have some quantum that gets created in order to bring things back online. It's there. It's not like it's not, it didn't go anywhere. It's still there. It's just us recognizing it within ourselves and the dormancy that is, been created. And I think that in the past, for me, working with that energy has been helpful. It doesn't always come with ease and grace as much as I would like to, but sometimes what's required is something more that, comes and, strikes you and lights you up in a way that is needed. And then I feel like the integration that and the time that we'll have through going through Taurus will be so essential. So I sort of feel the comfort of the mother through that process. Like, I don't feel like sometimes when these astrological transits come through, they hit us over the head, and then we sort of have little time to integrate. I feel like being in Taurus is allowing us to have some time for that integration, and because it'll slow it all down. So I'm kind of grateful for that overall. And really get at it, like really get at those pieces that we need and identify them. And I think as a group, we have that real opportunity to, bring those awarenesses in so we're not missing them, because it's one of those things, because, we all have a place within us that we can hide the pain, and that's just no longer required. I have Uranus in the 11th house and in Libra. So, to me, I can see where I have to do this more publicly. I don't have a choice. Like, that's what's really required at this moment.
It feels like it's a perfect match for the wound in Chiron of Chiron. It's like the pain, the fiery pain with it's okay, you've got the space to communicate about this and to expand, which for me just makes me feel like, I
want to pull up some of my astrological knowledge, and that is that for many of the charts that I see, Uranus is opposite Chiron. So for years and years, Uranus was slowly moving, and Chiron also moves very slowly through charts. So many people have Uranus opposite Chiron. Yeah, I do. And a lot of charts I see do. And so that wound was the Uranian impulse to be unusual or eccentric, or flashes of insight, or receiving the packets from source. That's my wound. Like, because from a child, I could hear and I could see and I knew. And that was my major wound, just like my child who said, Mom, I can't go to school because what people are saying is not how they actually feel. How they're presenting themselves is not what they're actually thinking. And I think with Uranus and Aries, a lot of people have said what we've all appeared to be on our Facebook page is not really what's going on in the household. So you get little glimpses of what might be going on in the household, and I know because I'm the personal astrologer of many, many very popular people. And because I'm an astrologer, I have to keep confidence of what I know is really going on in that household. I can't say a darn thing about what I know is going on in that household. And I have to be very quiet about it. And some very public people who appear to be one thing are not. And the interesting thing now that Uranus is not able to see Chiron, so if we think about it geometrically, they're both like at the beginning degrees of a sign that have no geometric relationship. So what Emmeline is saying is very interesting. The wound is like, I am and I have the right to be here, I exist. And now Uranus is in the sign right after that, slowly bringing down the codes from the positive male polarity, Kundalini electrical light up, which is what Uranus represents, slowly down into heaviest of heavy earth sign, fixed, sensual, big, bullish Taurus. And this is really amazing for the people who were born with Chiron opposite Uranus, who had telepathy from the get-go. And I always have. And what I actually know is going on in people's personal lives, but I can't say a darn thing. That has been a major wound for me. And for me, I'm going, please, let's have telepathy, please, because I need everyone to know what's going on. So, and how would that feel if everyone knew what was really going on? Like my little girl. Different from what people were saying in school. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting kind of experiences, because it's when you have that ability to contact mind to mind, you're going to potentially come up with someone else's pain and have that, as well as the the blissful things, but there will be much less illusion there, so there'll be, to some degree, I think, a different set of boundaries, but you cannot invade someone's mind any more than you can anything else about their sovereignty. um but I think that because we have not had to really deal with the issues of telepathy, we have, some people really just like let their thoughts leak out and are probably projectors, and they're going to be like blasting all their thoughts until they learn to kind of bring it into their field a little bit. And then some people may be intrusive until some people learn to be like, hey, this is my space, don't project your thoughts into my space. It's a little bit of a learning curve ahead for people who choose to open up to their telepathic gifts. And I think it's interesting to think about the myth of Uranus and Gaia. They were the kind of two original primordial lovers, and the whole story of him kind of being castrated by Saturn was a dispute about her children, or their children, some of the monstrous children, the like 100-handed ones and the Cyclops, and him, that he wanted to hide them and not really fully acknowledge them. And so I think a little bit of it is, as we get this kind of telepathic electrical Kundalini impulse coming back from Uranus, what's this about our creativity that we need to accept? Like, what are the outcomes, the children, the potentially monstrous things? Are we going to all of a sudden say no and reject Uranus again? So I'll let you think about that.
Yeah, all the secrets coming into light. I'm already seeing it with, sort of through session work or friends, family, things that have been hidden are all, this past couple of weeks, the amount of stuff that came out, whew, it was like heavy duty stuff. Because I think that part of having telepathy is that exposure. It's like knowing. As a little girl, similar to Lolita, I could hear and feel everything that was going on. I used to tell my mother all the time that everybody's a liar because I just, what they were saying. And I was so confused by it. And I remember a lot of times my parents got divorced when I was young, and I'd spend weekends with my father and my new stepmother, and my brother and sister were too young to go on the weekends away from my mother, so it would just be me, and they would take me out to these dinners and friends and all this kind of stuff, and they would proceed to have this communication, and there would be alcohol and things that would happen, and I would find myself unbearably sort of confused by what was being communicated, and I would go lock myself in the bathroom because I couldn't take the difference between my reality of what was happening and in what was being presented. And it took me a long time, because when you're a child, you don't really understand that. And if no one else is having that same experience, you have no support system. But I remember thinking over and over again, like, when is it going to be a point where what I feel from somebody is going to match? Like, when is that going to happen? And I used to beg for it. Like when I was all the way up into my 20s, I was still just begging for that to be a match with boyfriends, with friends, like everybody, like it just didn't match. And a lot of it is being empathic, but but part of what you were talking about, boundaries, and sort of saying that's a lot of the empath's journey, is to understand where the boundaries are so that I don't have to pick up that information. I don't have to do anything with that information. It doesn't have to affect me. And, I can invite that into my field when I want to, and I can push it away when I need to. I think it's going to be the same with telepathy. I think that there will not be necessarily an automatic, you can hear everybody's, thoughts and feelings. I think we'll start to have more and more impressions, sort of like that's, when I think about the collective, it'll be more impressionable. Like we'll just know they're not resonating more and more. And then we'll start hearing, the actual thoughts. But if we're in a unified field, we'll just pick them out as we need to. It's not going to be a bombardment. I don't think that you will, I don't think we'll all go crazy with the amount of voices that we'll be hearing.
So, how we had the conversation, Holly, you weren't here for this, so I'm just going to pick this up again, that the malevolent forces can send you telepathy into your head of fear thoughts. And Laura was talking about how she was with a group and doing whatever her group work was, and then she got on the bus and all kinds of fear thoughts came in. Because I'm an astrologer and I have very unbelievable personal conversations every day, I've had to learn how to have energetic boundaries. And some of you who did the first video series remember me saying like that I have to set a really strong energetic boundary, particularly if what happens is that someone continues to message me nonstop and involve me in their personal life. So I'll do their chart, and then for the rest of the day, like messages from them, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my house. I think I'm gonna like orphan my child. I think I'm feeling like I'm gonna die, like all day long. Because the internet is a lot like telepathy. And I have had to set some serious energetic boundaries, because I was like, do I turn off Messenger? No, because then none of you can message me. But I have to say, like energetic boundary, stop messaging me, don't come over. Like realize I'm your astrologer. This is a paid session. It's over now. I'm sorry. But it feels like we just had an incredibly intimate experience, and you're my best soul friend. But I'm really an astrologer, but what just happened was a soul exchange. And so what immediately, like that depth of that telepathy, of that soul exchange, like, you know, the core of me, you know me. And then I, as an astrologer, have to be like, I know you. Do not message me again. And I think that's where Holly's story of Uranus being severed, and there, you know, that's an incredible story right there. Because if we don't know how to have the energetic boundary, you are going to be the most emotionally drained person on the planet, which I have really had to deal with this. If you remember my first video series, I said, you'll be the most popular person and the most like flattened, emotionally drained human on the planet. So just having Messenger and Facebook and everything is kind of prepping you for that right now. Like, you can't come over. It's like getting a call from, again, some telemarketer with their toll-free number asking you again during dinner time, do you want to donate to my cause? It's like an energy vampire thing. So we're all learning right now with Facebook and Messenger and Instagram and all, I don't even know, Twitter and all the other things that I'm not involved in, how to be like, no, that's called boundaries. And that's the same with, like, if the archons start putting horrifying thoughts in you of fear. And actually, you know, there are persons that have been like actually manipulated between me and my work that are being interfered with. And then I have to sever them because I know, like, you don't understand, you're the vehicle to interfere with me right now. And I know if Jessica was on, she would understand, because we've worked on that before. So I have had to say, like, I have to create a boundary with you because you are being messed with to get to me and my triggering right now. So I'll stop there and see what is that bringing up.
Just to say that, I think with the telepathy thing, you know, when like having the direct community, you know, messenger and words and, you know, direct conversation like now, and then there's, you know, and it's like I can't even count the amount of times that through this group connection, heart beyond, you know, the grid connection that we have, the amount of times in the day I've been thinking about a subject, and then I've gone on Facebook and Nalita's made like a video about very similar, if not the same thing, obviously like from like broader with astrology and, you know, all attached to it, but it's like the same heart thing. And I'm like, yeah, I feel the connection and almost unaware of it because it's so real, you know, when it's in your face, you're unconscious because it's so there. You can be like, but I'm not connected. So like, it's real.
I can relate, Lolita, to, you know, for a long time as a child and as even a young adult, until I started to kind of shut it down because those impressions I just never knew what to do with. And, you know, ultimately bringing it back online when I did as part of just, you know, waking up again, I had to be really careful because, I mean, I started having friends that wanted to know this and wanted to know that. And, you know, impression after impression, it was just like constant, you know, like wanting me to tell them this or that. And you know, it did to give somebody information that ultimately also, if it's not what they want to hear, then it ultimately comes back to, you know, like you said, it's the opening to get back at you. You know, like you open the door by doing it, but yet they're bringing back their fear or their energy or whatever opening that they have or attachments they have back into that. And a lot of times by opening up my own psychic impressions was opening up awarenesses for psychic attacks to come back at me. And I had to learn to really like shut that part down and be, you know, really clear in the information that I was giving, and whether or not the person sort of through my own understanding could hear it, handle it, understand it, and integrate it without my assistance, like that they knew at a certain level what to do with it. Because otherwise it's just information. That's all it is. It's like, you know, at any moment we can change the path or the thread that we're following. And as I moved into sort of higher states of awareness and getting more into the higher sensory perception, the psychic nature of things completely changes. It's not about that, and you know, and sort of incorporating that. But there's a lot when you expose that kind of information to anybody. I found over again just having to set the boundaries. I would watch portal opening even through my husband. Like he would show up from, you know, and walk through I could look at his eyes and tell that it wasn't him. And he would be picking a fight like instantly. And I'd be like, wait a minute, like, who are you? Like, where did you come from? Like, get out. Like, you know, and it's only because through your own direct knowing the energy signature is of your husband or your, you know, friends or your family. But many times that happens until you really develop strong boundaries of who can come in, protecting your space, you know, clearing out your home space so that didn't come through. But you have to kind of learn it. It's sort of the dark arts training of what you can be exposed to through these energies. And now it doesn't happen so frequently because I think I've just developed my own sort of internal shielding about that. But I mean, I had a client this week that just looped and looped, and I finally had to explain to her, I can't give you a different answer for what you're, you know, like she just kept pressing on me because she didn't like what was coming up in the session. And the mental looping continued. And then she texted me, and then she called me, and I finally just stopped it. You know, you have to stop it because there is no end to it. It's meant to wear you down and and bother you, and, you know, try to get into that. And it was all mental fields. And I don't know how everybody was feeling this week, but the mental fields went a little berserk about halfway through the week. And I was like, oh, wow, like everybody got really charged up and it was like desperate for an answer. And, you know, I just, you know, you just had to, like, I couldn't go down that ship. I just wasn't going to go down that ship, those mental loops. No.
I'm waiting to see if anyone wanted to respond to that. Does anyone want to respond? Because I'm happy to keep going, but I want to make sure. You good? Okay. So let's keep going down this. Where we are right now is we're making a conscious choice to bring back our full participation here on Gaia with the multiverse. It's our choice to do that. During this time, what Laura just said and how I also explained to you it, there's a potential that some interference can happen. I think that is what happened with Emmeline this week and others of us who got into mental debates and then burned. And I know Jessica did. I literally burned.
I'm still burning, by the way.
Yeah. So what? So exactly.
I'm just burning. Like today I was so hot. my face.
And Jessica thought it was menopause. It's not menopause because Claude doesn't have menopause. So when we're changing the geometry and the cymatic is about to shift, which we've already talked about, the interference will come up, and possibly someone in your life, could be even your husband, will start to provoke a mental loop. Could be a client, could be the dogs barking at you. I don't know exactly, but it'll be a certain amount of mental loop. So I'm going to give you some tools, and anyone listens to this, here's some tools, okay? The vagus nerve, which connects from the base of the skull to the heart. Okay, and then it goes down through the spinal cord to many of your organs. This vagus nerve splits at the base of your skull, but then loops into this incredible bundle right here in the heart. It gets turned off or becomes less functional when you are stressed and have these kind of interferences. So the thing that you can do is splash cold water in your face. So before I started, I went in, because I had some pretty serious sessions still today. Splash cold water in my face. I did my energetic hopping. I opened the door, I did my energetic hopping. You can also do the slow circular breath. If you're not just about to do a session, you can take a really long walk. And the long walk will activate what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, so that you become conscious in your thought again instead of fight or flight. So I've done a lot of really long walks this week, and today there's a nor'easter out there. So I did a lot of just energetic hopping, splashing water on my face, then the long, slow breath, then lay down in full relaxation mode, and I would slow down my breath and do this like circular breathing, lengthening the exhale so that my body would say, oh, she's relaxed, it's safe to turn on these higher capabilities again that connect to the heart. The other thing is what you're eating. Potassium, magnesium, and sodium from sea salt or Himalayan salt. Potassium, magnesium, and sodium from a sea salt or a Himalayan salt mostly comes from vegetables, and that will strengthen the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve not only helps connect the brain with all of the organs, including the endocrine system and particularly the heart, but without it properly functioning, you stay in fight or flight. You stay in I'm under attack mode. If you're eating too much meat, Claude and I had this discussion, if you eat a lot of meat, your body is always preparing to go out and get another animal, like fight or flight mode. So the meat shuts down the vagus nerve's ability because it wants you to get in fight or flight mode. So limit the amount of meat if you eat meat. So I'm telling this not just to this group, but to like everybody that might be listening to this. I'm just looking at what's called functional medicine. And I studied this week energetic trauma release, where when you're a baby and you're scared, you'll shake all over. You'll like tremor. Really shake all over. And animals will do this too. When they're upset, my horses will go like that. And they'll shake, and then they'll be like roll on the ground and they'll get up and go. So there's this technique of energetic trauma release where you fatigue the psoas muscles, which are the fight or flight muscles, through certain postures so much, you fatigue them so much that your body starts to tremor from the fight or flight muscle in the psoas. And I'm very interested, actually, if we ever do like a retreat with this group and pull us all together at some point in doing some of this kind of stuff. Because what happens is the work that we're doing right now is like so incredible that we need to keep releasing levels of trauma that are not just ours, but is everybody's. So you might be burning not just for you. You might be burning for the collective. And anyone who's watching this video who's doing this, we support you. And I just wanted to give you kind of some of those tools that I use. All right, now I'll hear if anybody wants to say anything.
All of that was great information. I think that, you know, and as a separate note, there's a sort of a free movement dance that a woman named Rochelle, I don't remember her last name, but Koya dance, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but she basically says it's about giving your body permission to move how it wants to move. And she does some incredible, I mean, she does retreats and she does events and she does some teacher training, but her videos, her online videos that you can buy are fabulous. And she talks about the animals, you know, like a gazelle being chased by a lion. Its response when it finally outruns the lion is to shake. And, you know, so the trauma is released instantly. And so she talks a lot about, you know, shaking the legs, shaking the arms, shaking the whole body, dancing, shadow dancing, you know, what happens when we don't get our needs met, when the shadow comes up when we're not able to do that. But she's always dancing with intention. And she also does a lot of the salutations and positions, but it's a great 30-minute video for just letting it out. Just, you know, letting all of that through dance, move your body in a way that, you know, like, what does it want to do? How does it want to move? And she gives you ideas of how that, you know, works, but really it's just about moving your body. So all of that's very helpful. And I'm just saying that for the rest of the group too, because it's amazing. It's amazing technique. And it's, you know, even if I just turn it on for 10 minutes, it helps me tremendously just to release it.
Could you share the link?
Yeah, let me just put it in there. I'll do it on the chat, and then Lolita, you can copy it later.
I've been doing that, like after I've been like online teaching English to these kids that I teach with, and I feel the the trauma coming through them that's connected to that, and afterwards I kind of lie down for 5 minutes and thinking, okay, I'm gonna like lie down, because it's very empathetic. It feels like I'm doing something almost like Trojan horsey through what I'm doing all the time. I'm lying down for 5 minutes, like, yeah, okay. But then I suddenly have this surge, like I have got to like tribal dance like crazy for like 20 minutes, sweat, like I hit like the drums on my music on my phone. I get like shaman woman music, whatever, like the most extreme thing I can think. I'm like, I've just got to like do like primal positions and like beat my feet on the ground. I'm just like, yeah. And then I feel really good. And my life returns to me and I'm like, yes, I am who I am.
Yeah.
For the link.
And times like this week, it's been, I literally, aside from eating, I have liquid magnesium and liquid potassium, and even zinc sometimes I'll throw into the mix, and just put it in my water as I'm drinking it throughout the day, because you just cannot have enough. Energetically, we went through a lot with the full moon, the equinox, the CME hitting the earth. I mean, it's just been, you know, I call it, it's a red cheek week. You know, you're just burning, and you can't get enough water. And I find that the minerals, when I add it to my water, really help satiate and hydrate in a way that if you need extra, really helps. And so just constantly putting them in my water. I find that otherwise, and also salt, you know, like Lolita was saying, you know, just some really good whether it's, Celtic, sea salt or Himalayan sea salt, something really good quality of salt, helps a lot. And then also just going outside and putting, my feet on the earth or putting my face in the sun helps tremendously. I find a lot of times if I don't have enough time to do the dance or do something like that, just going outside and facing the sun, if it's available to me, helps tremendously.
Salt baths as well. I had a salt bath tonight.
Yeah, that's another good one. Another,
Mm.
my favorite is magnesium flakes and Epsom salt together. I'm like floating in my own Dead Sea in my bathtub.
I think another really helpful thing is if you're in a climate that allows it, or you're really brave, is to go put your feet out in the earth. I think I saw a photo of Jessica doing that. But putting your feet in the mud can like really help bring it down. And I know that this week I definitely felt electrified. Just not so much hot, but just like there was an electric current running through my body, like Tuesday through Thursday. And just very, like I had like one hand on an electric fence or some electric current, and it was just electrical, and my nerves felt so overstimulated. And I was definitely kind of getting like anxiety type of mental looping, and I'm like, why, my goodness, this is something with the full moon and everything, and like trying to like just bring it down. And even though I've kind of experienced times like that before, this past week was definitely a tough week. Even if you've, I think, have some experience with that kind of electrified feeling, of course, I have Chiron natally in Taurus, and Uranus is just getting right on top of it. I think it perfects in 8 days for me. So I'm like, got a Uranus on Chiron. So really getting that like zap of the electricity coming in this next week. And any of us with Chiron and Taurus, many of us will have, like Lolita was saying, that opposition. So that's, Uranus in Scorpio. So that, kind of counterbalancing. I'm not quite to the, the actual Uranus opposition yet, but it's going to start really applying, I think, this year and into next year, and really feeling that kind of, additional like electrified feeling. And of course, I had, we all have Mars in Taurus right now as well, which is also that hot energy. That's my 12th house, so I just like feel this undercurrent of somewhere like electrical like passion coming from, and it like, what is it, bubbling stuff up. It's, like I gotta live a normal life. I can't have all this stuff bubbling up from time to time. But it just happens.
It's interesting for me. I'll be having, I guess, whenever it gets there, but Uranus will be trining my Uranus in my natal chart in Capricorn at some point. 7 degrees or something. I can't remember the degrees.
Yeah, I want to maybe start to finish. It's 5:22, so I set the meeting for 5:30. One thing that I want to point out astrologically is that when Uranus is in Taurus, it's opposition to Scorpio, which Holly just pointed out really clearly. So Scorpio is traditionally where we can hide our thoughts and our feelings. So just by polarity, I mean, all of us have something in Scorpio. I know everybody's chart here. So just by polarity, it would make sense that Uranus in Taurus would be bringing out more of our true telepathic, authentic communication that can't be hidden, like it so beautifully can be hidden in Scorpio, which is the polarity. So Scorpio, I have my second husband has a lot of planets in Scorpio, and me being a Sagittarius, I tend to be painfully candid. And I told something that seemed really obvious to my daughter, and he said, trying to think, Claude remembers this because I was like, wow, I had no idea. You gave her that piece of information so she could use it as a weapon against me. Why did you do that? And I was like, whoa, Scorpio, I see you. Because I was like, I just told her the truth. But from the shadow side of Scorpio is, I'm going to control all the information so that nobody knows who I really am. And if you give her the information that I have, she's going to use it as a weapon against me. As an astrologer, you need to make a lot of jokes because that's how we can understand Scorpio. It is like so amazing, but you can make lots of jokes about every sign. But just that Uranus is making an opposition to that Scorpio, like nothing's going to be hidden anymore, is also very interesting to me. And then I also want to close and see what anyone else wants to say about the fact that humans as a collective are a feedback loop for Gaia. So whatever we're ready for, we're telling her. We're a feedback loop of information for Gaia. So if we're ready to bring online telepathy, she's ready. So every time we have a conversation, we're providing her like energetic level information that we're ready, Gaia. We're with you. Let's bring back that field. So I'll close now and say, each person is going to need to be responsible for their emotions and feelings, of course. And are we ready to have that sovereignty again? So I'll close there and see what you all want to say on that.
It's what I came here for. It's just what I came here for. And I think that, look, my Neptune is in Scorpio in the 12th house, along with Venus. So a lot of my life was hidden and a lot of it was in pushed back. So, but I look at this as an opportunity, and it's the opportunity I've been waiting for, and it's the opportunity I came for. So it just, as tough as it will be, it also is what's required. It's just how I see it. And it's a time to be brave.
I think what you were both saying is sparking for me. Then I have a lot of planets in Scorpio, and I have a lot that I want to say and give, but it often doesn't happen because of the Scorpio. Because I'm like, no. So I'm really excited because the things that, like when I made that video, that was me just being like, I'm just going to do it now without thinking about it, which is so unlike what I would normally do. So I'm really excited about being able to express myself more and like go into my mission more, actually, because I feel like that is gonna come more as it comes into opposition. Now that you said that, it's really, I think that. So yes.
I think it's so exciting, and I'm hoping that anyone out there who listens to this and has been thinking about their own personal sovereignty and how they fit into this kind of big matrix, and maybe has some fear about kind of breaking free a little bit, feels more supported, and that there is community out there, because it can be a scary thing when you are really enmeshed into the but lack of better words, the matrix of what things are like right now, and that hearing us, that they feel more like confident, encouraged that there are other people out there like stepping up and really trying to claim their sovereign gifts and their and activating themselves in like new exciting ways.
Okay, and so it is. I really appreciate everybody coming to this meeting today and all the people that will listen. And we should close now, because now everyone's in that kind of depth of feeling that we've sent our message to Gaia and we are prepared for this true divine bringing online of our gift of telepathy. Okay, bye-bye for now.